Alright, y'all, so today I want to make a very quick video to give you my thoughts on all the case updates regarding the David case. It's kind of ironic because my last video I was kind of expressing some frustrations. There wasn't really nothing major happening. And then, of course, when I make that video, boom, a bunch of major updates happen. I have tons of information that have been happening over the last few weeks. And I just wanted to give you a quick video to give you my thoughts on everything. So the basic gist of this is especially the people surrounding David are kind of being pulled into the investigative grand jury, and in general also Steve Fisher, the private investigator, has said some new things. The biggest thing is Neo, one of the former friends of David. Not exactly sure. I've mentioned him many times, and he's also been a huge suspect for people online regarding this case. He basically spoke out for the first time ever about this, at least ever since he's been arrested. And he basically made a bunch of posts, and he also kind of published a statement with the help from his lawyer. I'll kind of give you my thoughts on all that. And, of course, a friend of David is also apparently getting subpoenaed. And like I mentioned, Steve Fisher, the private investigator, said some new and interesting stuff regarding the case. So let's get into it all, man, because there's a lot of crazy updates. So the first big thing is one of, I guess, former friends of David, Asia. You know, she has been kind of the focus of a lot of people investigating this case, a lot of the internet detectives. People have been questioning her because, you know, she was close to David. She was part of his, most likely part of his friend circle. And, you know, she's kind of made some weird comments over the months, really some disrespectful comments. People think that she knows a lot more than she's letting on. And she kind of did a Reddit Q&A. A lot of people asked her questions. I personally think this was a huge mistake just because she said some pretty weird and incriminating things here. So the big thing that I want to give you my thoughts on is that apparently someone asked if, like, she knew, like, if she knew Celeste, if, you know, she knew she was a minor, yada, yada. Did she see the missing poster, yada, yada. And apparently what happened was, I guess back in 2024, and like I said, this is stuff that she really should have never said. She should have a lawyer present. She saw the missing poster for the child in 2024. And it was like a big thing. You know, there was the email that was sent to David's team and yada yada. And believe it or not, actually, if you are in contact with a child that's been declared missing and you don't bring her in, apparently that's a crime. So that's pretty interesting stuff. That being said, she saw it. She confronted David about it. And she's like, whoa, David, you really messing around with this kid? And David, I guess, explained the situation, showed her multiple IDs of the child in question, and he just kind of explained the situation. And she trusted her opinion, or his opinion on it, I guess, at the time, because she believed his opinion, because, you know, she believed that he was a good friend, and kind of dropped the case. She said also that she didn't really know Celeste too well. And that, I guess, like I said, they didn't really interact much. Like, I think she saw, like, her maybe every once in a while, or maybe if at all, but, like, she didn't really interact with her that much. And, of course, she made some weird things trying to defend herself. She apparently is getting threats from people regarding this case. And she made some things about her personal life and career choices and yada yada. And, I mean, I'm not going to get into all that. I mean, I think, personally speaking, this was a huge mistake for her to do, just because it really just, like I said before, doesn't make her look all that much better. Even if, like I said, a lot of it, what she's saying is true. Like, I do possibly believe that she's been threatened. I do believe that, you know, maybe she doesn't really have a lot to do with this case. It's very well possible. But I do find it weird. I think that she, like, apparently saw the missing poster and then didn't, like, believe David's word over the official, you know, government-filed missing poster report. That's just weird to me. I find that really strange just because, I don't know, like I said, it's just a weird thing. And, you know, you have a missing poster for a kid and then you get shown a bunch of IDs. I'm probably going to believe the missing poster a little bit more than the IDs you show me, which are most likely fake. But that's what she said, and that's, you know, according to her, that's the reasonings of what happened. But, you know, like I said, this was a big mistake. She shouldn't have done it. I think it was really weird. She probably let off too much information. But yeah, that was one of the big updates to happen. Another big update that happened was another friend that was kind of close to David, apparently, who's not really been discussed in this case, is a friend named Chase Keith, if I'm saying his name correctly. He's another person. He's like an influencer. I never heard of this guy. He makes TikToks. He also apparently does some music. He was also surrounding David's orbit and I guess maybe part of the inner circle. No one's really talked about him, but recently was reported he's been subpoenaed by the grand jury to come and talk about this case. Now, people have been kind of looking into this guy, and apparently he posted some music with a really disturbing music video that David liked and then eventually unliked, that involved chopping up a body, murdering something, kind of cutting apart a body. It's a very violent thing. Now, granted, I believe in artistic interpretation and artistic freedom. I think anyone should express however they want to feel about their music in a visual way that they feel like they need to express it. I believe in artistic freedom. That being said, I do think it's strange, especially considering the context and the circumstances that we find ourselves in, especially with this dude being subpoenaed in there, that this guy has a music video a few months ago, or at least a few months in 2025, of chopping up a body, killing someone. That just looks really weird, right? That looks really strange, and it looks really weird in hindsight. And I don't know, like I said, I do find it fascinating that they're going to call this dude up. I feel like this guy, and like I said, this is a guy that no one, and I haven't really seen too many people talk about this, but I have a feeling that this guy, who no one's really talked about, and I'll get into the whole Neil thing later, I feel like this guy might be involved a bit more than people are suspecting. I have a feeling that this guy could have been potentially a much larger role, so to speak, than people are kind of speculating him to be, right? I think that there's a lot more behind the scenes with this guy than what the public knows about it. And I'm just kind of theorizing, but I find it really strange. He's getting subpoenaed. This random guy that no one's heard of who has this weird video about chopping up a body and stuff. It's all really strange stuff. And I think it's, like I said, I think it says something. I'm not saying that there is something, but it's possible that there could be something with this guy. But yeah, he's getting subpoenaed into the grand jury. Really interesting stuff. And of course, probably the biggest topic of this video, and the one that kind of shocked me the most, is the fact that Neo has officially spoken out about this case. Now, Neo has been tight-lipped, hasn't said anything, posted random things. People have been suspecting online that he had something to do with it. He's been called off many times by the private investigator, Steve Fisher. But Neo finally posted something about this months later, after the whole situation where the guy got arrested at his mom's house and got brought to the grand jury and all this crazy stuff that happened with him. Well, he finally spoke out about it. He said something along the lines, and like I said, the basic theme of Neo's statements, which were kind of like posted like these Instagram like posts, were basically him defending himself, trying to explain to others that I'm trying to explain my side of the story. People are trying to paint me in a different light, and that, y'all don't know the full story. And then he basically suggests something along the lines of, y'all don't know the full story. There's a lot more to this case than the public knows, and I got the receipts. And then of course does a little ha 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 on one of the posts, which is really bad. And all these posts really made him seem like an asshole. He's just trying to defend himself, trying to clear his name, and there's not really any sense of like a sympathy or any sense of forgiveness, understanding to these posts. It's very much I, explaining my side of the story. And like I said, even if you have nothing to do with this case, even if, like I said before, people are just getting it wrong and you have nothing to do with this, that's fine. But the thing is, man, we're not here to talk about a case where David just broke his car and it got exploded. It's just about a situation like minor as that. We're talking about the fact that in one of David's cars in the front, there was a dead kid in there, a dead minor, a child named Celeste, and that just doesn't happen by itself, right? That doesn't just happen by itself like nature, right? Someone has to do it to her. Someone, especially someone with people are thinking, with an individual assisting them, could have caused something like that. There was a big effort to kind of maybe always sloppy wise trying to cover up a murder, most likely. And it's about a dead kid, right? This is not about you. This is not about you defending yourself. It's about getting to the justice and figuring out the whole situation and getting to the bottom of this case. And I just think, like I said before, his statements are just not great. I think really makes him look worse. It just makes him look really selfish. And like, I get it, like people get mixed up into things and they may not be actually involved. That's fine. But the thing is, you have to show respect. You have to show sympathy to the victim in question, right? You know, this is about a dead child, right? This is not about you. This is about getting justice and stopping other dudes from messing with other kids that, you know, in this case, someone messed with a kid and the kid ended up dead, right? It's way more bigger than you. Yeah, it just really frustrates me. Then he would post some other things later, a few days later. He said something along the lines of, well, I was going to do a statement with my lawyer, but TMZ, I guess, spoiled it or something. I don't know. And TMZ did make some comments about the whole thing when Neo spoke out over the past weekend, saying maybe possibly that, you know, David and Neo have like fallen apart, that they're not really friends, which I forgot to mention in one of David's or Neo's post. He basically called David a dickhead. So it sounds like the two are not really in cahoots, that he's not really messing with David no more, and that they had some kind of falling out. Now, whatever that could mean, and especially in relation to the case, we don't know. But eventually he posted the statement that him and his lawyer, I guess, made. And this statement he made was a lot more respectful to the child in question, Celeste, even though people have also been criticizing the fact that he couldn't even say her name in the post. But, I mean, hey, basically he said something along the lines of, my condolences to the family, you know, my condolences to the victim, and that, you know, this case is bigger than just me. And that, you know, I'm not going to make any statements about the case, and it's an ongoing investigation. But, you know, my client wasn't involved at all with this. You know, like I said, it's an ongoing investigation. And what really matters is finding justice for the victim. That's very much a brief runaround on what the heck the lawyer statement was. And, well, my thoughts on that. I mean, you know, it sounds like a really corporate statement, but at least he acknowledges, I guess, like he doesn't really say her name, but he acknowledges the victim, and some of the statements he makes here make sense, right? I mean, this is bigger than him. This is about getting justice for a child that got murdered in a car register to a medium level, the B to C tier level pop singer, right? Things like that just don't happen overnight, right? They don't just happen by themselves. It's about getting justice and preventing other people who may be thinking to do the same thing from ever trying to do it and locking them up, right? So it's about getting justice, right? And getting closure, and also a warning to other people. And like I said, the statement makes sense, right? It's bigger than him. I do think there's a bit of selfishness to the statement. And of course, the lawyer's going to say, oh, Neil had nothing to do with it. I don't know about that. Personally, my opinion on all this stuff, I think Neo is working with the police possibly on this. I mean, he also mentioned in one of his other posts that when he got arrested, that he apparently, the warrant got dropped, he had no charges filed, he was allowed to walk. I find that really strange, just because, okay, he's not being held for any legal stature. I think, personally speaking, he probably cut some kind of deal with the DA. They don't just let you out like that. They don't just, unless there's some kind of legal mess up, legal technicality that they messed up, and, you know, you basically are allowed to walk out free, which happens before in a lot of cases. But most likely, Neo is probably working with the authorities, which also is mentioned in the statement that was officially pressed with the lawyer, that he's apparently working with the investigation. So that's always a good thing. But yeah, I mean, my thoughts on this, I think he's probably working with the police on this at least a little bit. And I do think he knows a lot more than's going on. Now, do I think he was the second man that maybe did something, and people are speculating that, you know, David could have possibly, at least allegedly, not committed the murder of the kid? I'm not exactly sure. I can't really be honest, like fully certain in my opinion on that, just because I do think Neo was involved. I'm not sure if he was involved like that. That's why I'm kind of curious about this other individual, Chase Keith or whatever his name was, the other guy that got subpoenaed. I do find it fascinating that he might be involved, and where no one's just thinking about him. I do think Neo knows a lot more than he's letting on. I do think he knows a lot, but I don't know necessarily if it's to the extent of actually covering up a murder. I'm not sure, but I'm sure he's working with the police, and I feel like I said before, they're not just going to drop all charges and let you go away scot-free unless you give them something. So I feel like in a lot of ways, maybe he gave them something. Maybe he even spoke at the grand jury. Like I said, it's kind of flipping the script on that narrative a little bit, but I find this all really fascinating. But yeah, that was one of the big updates. And now let's get on to the other major update, which is the SF Investigate Steve Fisher. Once again, he's been tweeting and posting a lot of things about the case. He basically made fun of Neo, destroyed his posts that he made over the weekend, which I think a lot of it was really good analysis and all this. I think a lot of it was, for me personally, very selfish, but regardless, Steve Fisher basically said something along the lines in a new post that he basically said something along the lines, sorry, I'm fumbling my words a little bit here, that, well, if the DA, the people who are trying to charge David, the authorities, so to speak, don't have enough evidence on him to get murder, they need to stack less charges on him so that they eventually can maybe stack a murder charge on top of that once they have enough for a case. So basically, get him on the smaller charges, get him on the more easier to prove charges, and then get him on the murder charges. And he basically has alleged proof that David was basically messing around with 2 other minors. He apparently had photos, which I think he posted one photo, and, basically said that he has photos, he has screenshots, he has proof that David was messing around and possibly in a relationship with 2 other minors. And one of them apparently being around the time he was also messing around with Celeste. My thoughts on this, man. Whew, boy. I gotta be honest here. This one kind of threw me for a little bit of doozy. The guy was messing around with 2 other kids. Now, granted, there was one story that came out, I think when the case broke, that was what was a message that he was like, he messaged another minor and basically was something saying like, oh, he broke it off with her, yada, yada. And I think it was like she was 16, he was 18. And she came out, I guess, to like kind of explain herself that like, I guess like they met up before he was 18 or something. I don't know. And like I said, I'm not sure if that's what Steve Fisher is referencing or, it's something else entirely. But she already explained that situation. Not to say that it makes it any right. But the fact is he might have proof that he was messing around with 2 other minors. And he posted a photo with a female that is most likely a minor. Bro, this not only shows a pattern that David is into minors, that he's messing around with kids. It's like I said, it's a pattern of behavior, which is always usually a definitive sign of something bad to come, right? If you're a person that like has a pattern, oh my goodness, that means that you most likely did it, and there's a pattern to your involvement in activity. I mean, Celeste wasn't the only one. There was possibly 2 other minors. That is insane. That is actually creepy. This dude needs to be locked up. Like, I'm serious. Like, he's messing with other kids. That's really insane. Now, I also totally agree with Steve Fisher's comments, too, about getting him on lesser charges. He mentioned something about the fact that if he knew that Celeste was a missing kid back in 2024 with the missing poster and stuff, which, she eventually went again missing after that in 2024, that he could be charged with a crime. And I've been saying this for quite a while, especially when I'm talking about this case on the channel. Like, I'm not sure if there's even enough to get him on murder, like a homicide, but you can easily get him probably on pedophile charges. I think at the very least, get him on charges like PDF, get him on PDF charges, or even, like Steve Fisher said, the child abandonment, ones, right? Get him on he knew that she was missing and didn't do anything and didn't return her to the parents and stuff. Get him on that. And then eventually, once you get him on the lesser charges, then if you have a strong case and you can make your case, stack the murder charges, which, like I said before, I think that's what they really should have done. I think in a lot of ways, maybe that's why there's a huge delay on why anyone's getting arrested in this, just because they're trying to go only for homicide, and it's kind of becoming difficult to prove that, at least in without a shadow of a doubt in a grand jury. Why don't they just get him on lesser charges? I'm just kind of curious, right? I mean, I think that makes total sense. I've been saying something similar on this channel for quite a while. Like, if you can't get him on murder charges, he has to be charged for something lesser, like PDF crimes, child crimes, or even, like I said before, the crimes that Steve Fisher mentioned in that tweet. That makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, also talk about the two minors thing. That's disgusting, dude. That's disgusting. And it makes it even worse because it shows a pattern of behavior and a pattern of, child interest, pedophilia, something that, like it says, unnatural, right? Something that, like, when you turn into an adult, naturally, most people are trying to get involved with other people that are similar in age. Most people, at least I would hope, most people are not into people like kids, but some people are discussing predators, and they shows a pattern of intent and pattern of behavior, and it's disgusting. It's creepy, and apparently the police know about this too. Steve Fisher mentioned they had the evidence. I'm just kind of baffled why no moves are being taken here. I hope soon they make a move and arrest somebody. Like I said, the grand jury is still ongoing. They're still subpoena people. I'm not sure, like, if David's family is going to show up. This Chase guy is probably going to show up. Teams, he says it's still ongoing. They're unclear if whether, the grand jury has concluded, if they're going to pull, like I said, they're saying that it's likely an indictment's coming, but we really don't know. And, like I said, we just don't know the state of that. There's also been people saying that it could be a criminal grand jury, not an investigative grand jury, which like I said before, I've always kind of assumed it was a criminal one. I mean, we're dealing with some serious stuff here, criminal charges. I would assume this is a criminal one, but we'll wait and see. I'm just hoping that, like I said before, some major movement on this case happens soon. I do think, like I said before, the temperature is cooking a little bit on this case. I mean, Neil is speaking out. The Neil got arrested. People are still getting subpoenaed here. And they recently Steve Fisher just did a major thing with CNN. They kind of did this whole, I guess, like, documentary or kind of special on the David case. It's starting to get more traction on social media. I think, too, more and more people are kind of getting their eyes back on it, because when it broke, everyone was talking about it. And then ever since, there really hasn't been much happening. It's only been, like, smaller YouTubers like me and, like, Trapmore Ross talking about it. But since CNN is making a thing about it, I am hoping that, like I said, something major happens in the next few weeks, and I'm hoping that someone gets arrested for this. I mean, it is kind of crazy. We are going into March. The whole thing broke in September, and there's been no official charges or arrests been dropped here. I mean, we had a dude that got arrested at his mama's house and brought to the grand jury because he didn't want to show up. And now he's saying that, trying to defend himself in a bunch of posts. I don't know. Like I said, I'm hoping that some major updates happen. But, yeah, just want to give you my thoughts on everything. And sorry if I'm rambling a little bit, just trying to collect all my thoughts. But, yeah, my thoughts on everything about the David case updates. Hopefully something major happens, and hopefully we have justice for Celeste. All right, y'all. Hopefully you have a good day, and peace, y'all.